What if Russia could make the Suez Canal irrelevant overnight? Right now, 12% of everything the world buys and sells squeezes through a single choke point that can be blocked by one stuck ship. But deep in Russian territory, engineers are planning something that sounds impossible. A 700-kilometer waterway that would slash shipping times by 15 days and completely redraw the map of global commerce. The country under the heaviest sanctions in modern history is about to control a brand new artery of world trade. Keep watching, because this might be the greatest infrastructure power play in history. Did you know that 90% of everything you own traveled by ship at some point? Your phone, your clothes, even the coffee you drank this morning, all of it crossed an ocean. And here's the terrifying part. Almost all of it passed through one of just three narrow waterways: the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, the Strait of Malacca. These three choke points control the heartbeat of global trade, and any one of them can stop the world economy in its tracks. In March 2021, the world got a brutal wake-up call. The Ever Given, a container ship longer than the Empire State Building is tall, got stuck sideways in the Suez Canal. For 6 days, 400 ships piled up on both sides. The cost? $9.6 billion in delayed goods every single day. Factories in Europe ran out of parts. Store shelves in America went empty, all because one ship turned the wrong way in a canal that's only about 1,000 feet wide at its narrowest point. But it gets worse. Since late 2023, Houthi rebels have been attacking ships in the Red Sea, the gateway to Suez. The result? 90% of container ships now avoid the area entirely, adding 2 weeks to their journeys by sailing around Africa. 6,000 extra miles of fuel, crew wages, and time. Insurance costs for Middle East routes have exploded by 400%. Meanwhile, climate change is making the Panama Canal unreliable. Drought restrictions in 2023 cut ship crossings by nearly 40%. The current system has become a house of cards, and Russia sees an opportunity. This isn't a new idea. Russia has dreamed of connecting Europe to Asia through its own territory since the Tsarist era. Peter the Great himself envisioned a water route that would bypass foreign-controlled straits entirely. He commissioned surveys of the Manych Depression in 1708, noting in his journals that, quote, "nature herself has prepared this path," end quote. In the 1800s, Russian engineers drew up detailed plans for canals connecting the Caspian Sea to the Black Sea, but the technology didn't exist. Steam shovels weren't powerful enough. The distances were simply too vast. The Soviet Union attempted smaller canal projects in the 1930s and 50s, but costs spiraled and plans were abandoned. Each failure taught valuable lessons. Lessons that today's engineers are finally ready to apply. Then came 2022. Western sanctions hit Russia harder than any nation in modern history. Suddenly, Russian goods couldn't move through traditional routes. Russian ships faced insurance blacklists. What looked like economic devastation became motivation. If the West could strangle Russia's trade, Russia would build its own route, one it controlled completely, one no foreign power could ever shut down. Enter Viktor Olersky, the former deputy minister of transport who became the project's most vocal champion. Standing before the Russian parliament in early 2023, he made the case that would change everything. Quote, "We built the Trans-Siberian Railway when the world said it was impossible. We sent the first man to space. This canal is not a dream. It is a strategic necessity." Within months, preliminary funding was approved. Before we dive into what Russia is building, you need to understand why every alternative has failed. The northern sea route through the Arctic sounds promising. It's entirely in Russian waters and cuts thousands of miles off the journey from Asia to Europe. But there's a problem. It only works 4 months a year. The rest of the time, ice up to 10 feet thick makes passage impossible without expensive icebreaker escorts costing up to $200,000 per voyage. Insurance companies refuse coverage, citing unpredictable weather and zero port infrastructure. Climate predictions for reliable year-round Arctic access keep getting pushed back. Some scientists now say 2080 at the earliest. What about rail? The Trans-Siberian Railway stretches over 5,700 miles from Moscow to Vladivostok, the longest railway line on Earth. But it's maxed out, handling about 150 million tons annually, while maritime shipping moves over 11 billion tons. You'd need 70 Trans-Siberian railways to match what ships carry. Plus, transferring containers from ships to trains adds cost and time that defeats the purpose. Russia's existing Volga-Don Canal has connected the Caspian to the Black Sea since 1952, but the locks are shallow, only 4 meters deep, limiting passage to small barges. Modern container ships need 15 meters. The canal freezes 5 months yearly and handles only 14 million tons annually. Less than Suez moves in a single week. Every existing option is either too slow, too seasonal, too small, or controlled by rivals. Russia needed something entirely new. What Russia is planning makes the Suez Canal look like a swimming pool. The Eurasia Canal corridor would stretch 700 kilometers, nearly 3 times the length of Suez, cutting through the Manych Depression, a natural lowland corridor across southern Russia, between the Caspian Sea and the Sea of Azov. Here's why the geography is genius. The Manych Depression is essentially a prehistoric seabed, a flat valley that once connected the Black Sea and Caspian Sea millions of years ago. The ground is already low, in some sections barely above the water table. The soil is soft, composed of ancient marine sediments that modern excavators can move easily compared to solid rock. And most importantly, the entire route sits within Russian borders. No foreign permissions, no international treaties, complete sovereignty over every meter. The vision: year-round passage for Panamax-class vessels, ships up to 290 meters long, carrying goods from Shanghai to Rotterdam without touching a single foreign choke point. Chinese manufacturers could ship directly to European markets, cutting transit times by 2 weeks. Indian goods could reach the Mediterranean without passing through the conflict-plagued Middle East. But what makes this project truly ambitious is what happens at either end. The canal would link into Russia's existing river network, creating an inland maritime highway stretching from the Arctic to the Persian Gulf through Iran. Putin himself has called it, quote, a new Silk Road, but made of water, unquote. Let's talk numbers, because the scale of this project is almost incomprehensible. The main canal would require excavating approximately 2.1 billion cubic meters of earth. To put that in perspective, the Three Gorges Dam, the largest construction project in human history, moved only about 134 million cubic meters. This canal would move 16 times more material. If you loaded all that earth into dump trucks, the line would stretch to the moon and back, twice. The depth requirement alone is revolutionary. The existing Volga-Don Canal is 4 meters deep. The Eurasia Canal needs 15 meters minimum, nearly 4 times deeper, to accommodate modern container ships that ride low in the water when fully loaded. The width, 200 meters minimum, to allow two-way traffic for megaships that stretch longer than 3 football fields. Some sections would expand to 300 meters to create passing zones where faster vessels can overtake slower traffic. Then there's the elevation problem. The Caspian Sea sits about 28 meters below sea level. It's technically the world's largest lake, not connected to any ocean. The Sea of Azov sits at sea level. That 30-meter difference requires a lock system unlike anything ever built. Engineers are planning 12 to 15 massive locks, each one capable of lifting ships weighing up to 80,000 tons. For comparison, the largest locks at Panama lift ships about 9 meters. These Russian locks would need to handle elevation changes more than twice that size, requiring hydraulic systems of unprecedented power and precision. Chief engineer Dmitry Volkov, who previously worked on the Crimean Bridge project that stunned Western experts by completing ahead of schedule, has been leading the technical planning since 2022. In a rare interview with Russian state media, he described the challenge, quote, "It's not just building a canal. We're engineering climate. We're fighting geology. We're essentially creating a new body of water where none existed. Every Soviet attempt failed because they tried to work against the environment. We're going to work with it." End quote. The construction timeline? 10 to 15 years optimistically, 20 or more realistically. The workforce? More than 200,000 workers at peak construction, essentially building 3 temporary cities in the Russian steppe just to house the labor force. The equipment? 500 excavators, 300 dredgers, custom-built machines for the lock chambers, and technology that doesn't even exist yet, but is being developed specifically for this project. Here's where it gets truly impressive. Southern Russia isn't the frozen wasteland most people imagine. Summer temperatures reach 30 degrees Celsius, hot enough that workers will need constant hydration and rotating shifts. But winters drop to minus 40. That's a 70-degree temperature swing that would freeze any normal canal solid for 5 months a year, making the whole project pointless. Just another seasonal route no better than the Arctic. Russia's solution? Climate-controlled sections using technology adapted from their nuclear icebreaker fleet, the most advanced cold-weather maritime technology on Earth. Strategic points along the canal would feature heated channels, underwater warming systems powered by 3 new nuclear power plants built specifically for the project. These wouldn't be small reactors. Each plant would generate over 1,000 megawatts, enough to power a city of 1 million people. The estimated additional cost just for the power infrastructure? $12 billion. But the most fascinating innovation might be the lock chambers themselves. Engineers are designing earthquake-resistant structures, necessary given the proximity to the seismically active Caucasus region, that can operate in extreme cold. They're using heated hydraulic systems that keep the lifting mechanisms from freezing, and covered lock chambers that essentially function like enormous enclosed swimming pools. Ships would enter enclosed sections, rise through heated locks where temperatures stay above freezing year-round, and emerge into the next stretch of canal, all without ever being exposed to the brutal Russian winter. Imagine this moment. It's winter 2038. Snow blankets the Russian steppe as far as the eye can see. The landscape so white it glows under the weak winter sun. But beneath the ice-covered landscape, something impossible is happening. A Chinese container ship named the Yangtze Star, carrying 10,000 containers of electronics bound for Hamburg, glides silently through enclosed heated canal locks. The water around the vessel steams in the frigid air, but inside the covered lock chamber, the temperature holds at a comfortable 5 degrees Celsius. On the bridge, Captain Wei Jianming watches his GPS in disbelief. He left Shanghai 14 days ago. His father, also a ship captain, used to make this journey in 35 days via Suez, when nothing went wrong. Wei remembers childhood stories of delays, of pirates, of insurance nightmares. Now he's about to deliver cargo 3 weeks early, with fuel savings of 40% and insurance costs that are a fraction of the traditional route. This is the moment Russia is betting everything on. When the first Panamax vessel completes the journey, the entire calculus of global trade changes forever. Shipping companies will have a choice: the traditional route through foreign choke points, where rebels can attack you and one stuck ship can cost you billions, or the Russian route, 20 days faster, entirely predictable, entirely controlled by a single nation that desperately wants your business and will do anything to keep it flowing. The projected toll revenue, $15 billion annually if traffic meets projections. That would make this single canal more valuable than Russia's entire arms export industry, more valuable than their vodka exports and diamond mines combined. It would transform Russia from an economy dependent on oil and gas into something far more powerful, a landlord of global commerce. But the canal itself is just the beginning. To make this work, Russia is planning an entire ecosystem of supporting infrastructure that nearly doubles the total investment. 4 new megaports would rise along the canal route, each capable of handling 50 million TEU, that's 20-foot equivalent units, the standard shipping container measurement, annually. The combined capacity would rival Rotterdam and Singapore combined, the 2 busiest ports in their respective regions. These wouldn't be simple docks. They'd be fully automated terminals with AI-guided cranes, robotic warehouses, and customs processing measured in minutes rather than days. Estimated cost? $6 billion. 3,000 kilometers of new freight rail lines would connect these canal ports to the Trans-Siberian network, allowing containers to transfer seamlessly between ship and rail. A container arriving from Shanghai could be offloaded at a canal port, loaded onto a train, and arrive in Moscow within 48 hours. Faster than any current shipping option. Cost: $8 billion. 8 major highway and railway bridges would span the canal, with the longest stretching 1.2 kilometers across, a suspension marvel that would rank among the longest in Russia. 2 underground tunnels would maintain road connectivity for regions split by the waterway, ensuring local communities aren't cut off from each other by the massive construction. Then there's the human infrastructure. 200,000 construction workers need housing, food, medical care, and entertainment for 15 years. Russia is essentially building 3 new cities from scratch in the middle of nowhere, complete with schools for workers' children, hospitals, shopping centers, recreation facilities, and even theaters. Some estimates suggest these worker cities might become permanent settlements, new Russian towns born from the largest construction projects since the Soviet era. Local officials are already planning for populations of 50,000 or more to remain after construction ends, creating entire regional economies centered on operating and maintaining the canal. True total cost when everything is included likely exceeds $60 billion, 3 times the headline figure. Some analysts whisper it could reach $100 billion before the first ship passes through. No project this massive comes without environmental concerns, and Russian engineers are addressing them head-on. The Caspian Sea has been dropping for decades, decades. Water levels have fallen by 1.5 meters since 1995 due to climate change and upstream damming. Critics argue that diverting water into a massive canal system could accelerate ecological collapse in one of the world's most unique bodies of water. Home to 90% of the world's sturgeon population, the source of the finest caviar on Earth. The beluga sturgeon, which can live over 100 years and grow larger than a great white shark, is already critically endangered. Russia's answer? The canal won't drain the Caspian. Instead, engineers are designing a closed-loop lock system, where water used to lift ships is recycled rather than released. Think of it like an enormous bathtub that never drains. The same water lifting ships up one side flows back to lift ships on the other side. Additionally, the project includes wetland restoration zones along the canal banks, creating new habitats to offset construction impacts. Environmental impact statements promise more than 500,000 hectares of new protected wetlands, more than the area disturbed by construction. Whether these measures prove sufficient remains to be seen, but the commitment to solutions rather than excuses marks a departure from Soviet-era megaprojects that ignored environmental costs entirely. The international response has been extraordinary. China, officially, has said little, diplomatic silence that speaks volumes. But satellite imagery shows Chinese engineering firms have stationed personnel near proposed construction sites since late 2023. China's own Belt and Road Initiative has invested over $1 trillion in infrastructure worldwide, but it lacks a truly independent maritime route to Europe. This canal could be the missing piece. India is quietly exploring whether the route could reduce their dependence on the Malacca Strait, where 80% of their oil imports currently pass. Iran sees the canal as the missing link in their own north-south corridor ambitions, connecting their Persian Gulf ports to European markets through Russian territory. But for others, this project represents an existential threat. Egypt earns $9 billion annually from Suez Canal tolls, revenue that would evaporate if shippers choose the Russian alternative. Egyptian diplomats have reportedly been lobbying European nations to sanction any company involved in construction. Turkish officials have made subtle diplomatic warnings about threats to their Bosphorus transit fees, which bring in hundreds of millions annually. The United States has hinted at consequences for any nation that helps build what Washington calls, quote, sanctions evasion infrastructure, end quote. If successful, this canal could split global trade into two separate systems: Western-controlled maritime routes through traditional choke points, and an Eastern system flowing through Russian territory. Shipping companies would face an impossible choice between efficiency and sanctions compliance. The insurance industry is already in chaos, trying to figure out how to rate a Russian mega canal that Western governments might blacklist at any moment. Here's the reality check. As of early 2025, preliminary surveys are complete. Minor dredging on the existing Volga-Don Canal has been marketed as Phase 0, widening and deepening a 20-kilometer stretch as proof of concept. About $800 million has been released so far, roughly 4% of the claimed budget. The original 2024 groundbreaking has been pushed to 2026 or later, but dismissing this as propaganda would be a mistake. Russia has a history of delivering on impossible projects when motivated. The Trans-Siberian Railway was called lunacy by Western observers. They said it would bankrupt the empire and never be completed. It took 25 years and transformed Siberia forever. The Crimean Bridge was declared impossible by European engineers, who said the geological conditions couldn't support it. It opened in 2018, ahead of schedule, and survived multiple attack attempts. Both exist today because Russia decided they would exist. The real question isn't whether Russia wants to build this canal. The question is whether anything can stop them. What we're witnessing might be the most ambitious infrastructure project of the 21st century, or the most spectacular failure. A nation under siege is betting $60 billion that it can reshape global commerce in its favor, building a water highway through frozen steppes that would make Peter the Great weep with pride. 3 centuries after the Tsar first dreamed of connecting his seas, his descendants might finally deliver. So what do you think? Will this canal ever be completed? Will Russian ships carry Chinese goods to European ports, while Western powers watch helplessly? Or is this another monument to ambition that will crumble under its own weight? Drop your prediction in the comments below. Let's discuss. And if this story made you think differently about the future of global trade, hit that subscribe button. Because when ground breaks on this project, when the first locks start rising from the Russian steppe, you'll want to know first. Don't miss more incredible stories about how nations are using engineering to reshape our world and challenge what we thought was possible.